Imagine for a moment you could inhabit one of two distinct worlds.
Hmm.
Each one would fundamentally change how you experience success, failure, even effort itself.
Yeah, it's like one world is all about proving who you are right now. The other is about becoming who you could be.
Exactly.
Oh,
It's a profound choice, and one most of us, well, we make it without even realizing it.
yeah.
These beliefs we hold about our abilities, they
Mm,
really shape our whole reality.
they absolutely do.
So today we're taking a deep dive into precisely this concept, mindsets, specifically the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Right.
Our mission here is to really unpack where these powerful beliefs come from, understand how they shape, well, everything, our relationships, our careers,
How we face challenges.
yeah, everything, and maybe most importantly, reveal why just recognizing your own mindset gives you this incredible choice for like personal transformation.
And we're drawing these insights from some really compelling research based on years of work looking into how people actually approach ability and learning. You're going to uncover some surprising stuff, actually, about how your brain literally responds differently depending on your mindset and why some people seem to thrive on challenges while others just give up.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where did this whole idea even start? The story of these mindsets, it actually begins with a pretty personal journey, doesn't it?
It does. The author initially had this vision of, well, effortless success, a sort of prince-like mate, a glamorous career, all meant to validate who she thought she already was.
Like it should just happen naturally if she was good enough.
Exactly. But, surprise, surprise, she found out pretty quickly. Nothing was easy. Life doesn't really work that way.
Right.
And what's fascinating is how that personal struggle kind of clicked with her professional research. She and her doctoral student, Mary Bandura, were puzzling over this question. Why do some students seem obsessed with proving they're smart,
Mm.
while others just seem to, relax and learn even when they make mistakes?
So what was the breakthrough? What did they figure out about that difference between proving and just learning?
Well, they had this realization. It wasn't just one way to think about ability. There were actually two fundamentally different meanings people were using.
Okay.
One was this idea of a fixed ability,
Hmm.
something you just have, or you don't. And if you have it, well, you got to prove it, right?
Makes sense.
But the other idea was that ability is changeable. It's something you can develop through learning, through effort, and that realization, that distinction, that was basically the birth of the mindsets.
Wow. It sounds like once you adopt one of these mindsets, it really does create a whole different world for you. Can you walk us through what those worlds look like?
Yeah, absolutely. When you step into the fixed mindset world, it's got its own rules. Success here is all about validation. Proving you're smart, proving you're talented, it's about looking good.
Okay. And failure.
Failure is devastating. It means you're not smart, you're not talented. It's a direct reflection on your core worth, almost.
And effort. Where does that fit in?
Effort is actually kind of a bad sign in this world. Because if you were really smart, truly gifted, you wouldn't need to try so hard, right? It should come naturally.
So needing effort implies you lack the inherent talent.
Precisely. But then you step into the growth mindset world and everything flips.
How so?
Here, success isn't about proving you're already great. It's about stretching yourself. It's about learning. It's about becoming smarter.
So it's a process.
Exactly. And failure. It's not some permanent label. It just means you didn't grow yet. Or maybe you didn't reach for something you value. It's feedback.
Okay, that feels very different. And effort.
Effort is the key. Effort is what makes you smart or talented. It's the engine. It's how you build those abilities. It's seen as a positive, necessary thing.
It really drives home that these mindsets aren't who we are fundamentally. They're beliefs.
Just powerful beliefs. And
Yeah.
that's the hopeful part. Because beliefs can be examined and they can be changed. You have a choice.
So let's dig into that choice, especially around success. Is it mainly about learning, or is it about proving you're already smart? There's that great quote from Benjamin Barber.
Oh, yeah. I divide the world into the learners and non-learners. It's provocative, but it gets at something deep.
What do you think he means by that?
Well, think about little kids, infants even. They have this incredible, relentless drive to learn walking, talking. These are hugely difficult tasks.
Totally. They fall down constantly, make weird sounds.
Right. And they just keep going. They barge forward. There's no fear of mistakes, no sense of humiliation. It's pure learning mode.
It's amazing to watch. So what happens? Where does that natural exuberance for learning sometimes go? What puts the brakes on it?
Often it's the fixed mindset starting to creep in. Even from a really young age, people can start becoming afraid of not looking smart, and then they actually start rejecting chances to learn.
Even as young as preschool. You mentioned a study.
Yeah, a fascinating study with 4-year-olds and puzzles. They offered the kids a choice after they did well on an initial puzzle,
Hmm.
do the same easy one again, or try a harder one.
And what happened?
The kids with the fixed mindset overwhelmingly chose the easy puzzle. They wanted to guarantee success, to keep looking smart.
Sure.
Some even said things like, smart kids don't make mistakes.
Wow.
But the growth mindset kids, they thought that was weird. They jumped at the harder puzzles. One little boy was like, I'm dying to figure them out. They saw the challenge as the fun part, the learning part.
That's such a clear difference. And does this carry over into, say, school subjects?
Absolutely. There's this great study at the University of Hong Kong. Everything's taught in English there, which is tough for many students.
Okay.
They offered a remedial English course to students who weren't fluent. The ones with a growth mindset were like, yes, please, sign me up. They saw a clear opportunity to improve.
Made sense to them.
But the students with a fixed mindset, mostly uninterested, they didn't want to expose their weakness, didn't want to admit they needed help. It felt too risky, like admitting they weren't smart enough. That's how the fixed mindset literally creates non-learners.
You can actually see this difference in brain activity too, right?
Yeah, that's wild. Studies at Columbia looked at brainwaves. People with a fixed mindset, their brains only really lit up, showed interest when they got feedback about their ability, like, were they right or wrong?
So judgment.
Basically, yeah. But they largely ignored information that could actually help them learn from their mistakes. Whereas the growth mindset folks, their brains were keenly attuned to information that could help them learn and improve, regardless of whether they were right or wrong initially. Learning was the priority.
It's incredible how deep this goes, even neurologically. It really underscores how fundamental this split is between proving and learning. So, okay, these mindsets clearly affect learning. But they don't stop there, right? They influence our relationships, even leadership styles. Let's talk about relationships first. What about finding an ideal partner?
Yeah, we asked young adults about this, and the patterns were striking. People with a fixed mindset often described their ideal mate as someone who would basically put them on a pedestal.
Worship them almost.
Pretty much. Someone who'd admire their existing qualities, make them feel perfect. The author mentioned her own husband used to joke before he met her that he wanted to be the god of a one-person religion. It's about that constant, uncritical validation.
Okay, I can see that. But the growth mindset, folks.
Very different picture. They hoped for a partner who would, see their faults and actually help them work on them. Someone who would challenge them to be better, encourage them to learn new things.
So someone to grow with, not just someone to admire them as they are.
Exactly. They recognized they weren't finished products. They wanted a partnership focused on mutual development.
So, what happens when these two mindsets end up in a marriage? That sounds like a potential clash.
Oh, it can be incredibly difficult. There was one story from a growth mindset woman married to a fixed mindset man. She said every time she tried to bring up an issue, even gently, he'd be utterly crushed.
Like it was a personal attack.
Exactly. And then she'd have to spend ages just repairing the damage, reassuring him. His need for constant approval meant confronting problems felt like a nightmare to him. Her desire for growth was terrifying for him.
Wow. One person's attempt to improve the relationship becomes the other's source of pain.
It's a tough dynamic.
And this idea of needing to be on a pedestal, avoiding criticism, that crops up in leadership too, doesn't it? This CEO disease.
Absolutely. Lee Iacocca at Chrysler, after his initial big success, is often cited as an example. He started acting like those fixed mindset kids with the puzzles. He kept rolling out the same car models, just with minor tweaks, while competitors were fundamentally rethinking car design. He surrounded himself with yes men, pushed out anyone who challenged him. He resisted anything that questioned his established genius.
So he stopped learning, essentially.
He became a non-learner, yeah. He created a bubble where he had no flaws. Contrast that with someone like Darwin Smith at Kimberly-Clark. Even after huge successes, he was famous for always taking what he called remedial courses, always looking for ways to improve himself and the company.
That's a growth mindset approach.
Textbook growth mindset, always learning, always striving.
CEOs also face that dilemma, short-term wins versus long-term health. How does mindset play into that?
It often dictates the choice. Albert Dunlap at Sunbeam, for instance. He openly called himself a fixed mindsetter, actually. He was notorious for drastic cuts and strategies that gave quick stock boost, made him look like a hero, but ultimately gutted the company. It collapsed not long after he left. Short-term glory over long-term substance.
And the growth mindset alternative.
Look at Lou Gerstner at IBM. He took over when IBM was in deep trouble. He implemented this massive, painful overhaul. Wall Street hated it at first, called him a failure,
Right, I remember that.
but he stuck with it, focused on long-term rebuilding, changing the culture, and a few years later, IBM was a leader again. That's the growth mindset, playing the long game.
It's so compelling how growth mindset people don't just tolerate challenges, they actively seek them out. They thrive on them. You see this really clearly in sports, right?
Oh, definitely. Think of Mia Hamm, the soccer legend. She always made a point of playing up, practicing, and playing with older, better players.
Pushing yourself constantly.
Exactly. She knew that was the fastest way to improve, even if it was harder initially. Or Patricia Miranda, the wrestler. She described herself as this totally unathletic high school kid,
Right.
but she got into wrestling and was driven by this intense desire to see if pure effort and dedication could make her good, could legitimize her place. And she ends up winning an Olympic bronze and going to Yale Law.
Incredible transformation, driven by that mindset.
She famously said something like, if you only go through life doing stuff that's easy, shame on you. That's the growth mindset talking.
And then there's Christopher Reeve. Such an inspiring story.
Just unbelievable. After his accident, the medical world basically said, this is it. No recovery possible. Spinal cord injury, paralysis, that was seen as permanent.
A fixed diagnosis.
Completely. But Reeve refused to accept it. He started this incredibly demanding exercise program, constantly pushing, constantly asking, why can't I learn to move again?
Challenging the fixed reality.
And 5 years later, he starts regaining movement. He literally changed how science understood the potential for nervous system recovery. That's the growth mindset of fundamentally challenging limitations.
Wow. So in stark contrast, people with a fixed mindset, they tend to pull back when things get tough.
Yeah, they often lose interest or get discouraged. We saw this in a study tracking pre-med students in a tough chemistry course.
What happened there?
The fixed mindset students, when the course got difficult, their enjoyment and interest plummeted. They reported feeling anxious, wanting to drop the class. It felt like proof they weren't cut out for it.
But the growth mindset students,
They actually maintained high interest. Some even became more determined when things got harder. The challenge engaged them rather than discouraged them.
and you saw something similar with kids and those hard puzzles again.
Exactly. With the harder puzzles, the fixed mindset kids, even the ones who were initially really good at puzzles, showed this big plunge in enjoyment. They wanted to stop.
They didn't like feeling incompetent.
Right. But the growth mindset kids, they loved the hard ones. They were getting frustrated sometimes, sure, but they were engaged, saying things like, I have a challenge, and asking to take the puzzles home to keep working on them.
It really shows up in how people select talent, too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned a famous dance teacher.
Yes, Marina Semyonova, the great Russian ballet teacher. She apparently selected students not just based on raw talent or how they took praise, but crucially on how they responded to correction, how they handled being told what they needed to work on. She was looking for the ones who saw criticism as an opportunity to learn, not as an insult.
She was selecting for mindset, essentially.
Yeah.
Separating those thrilled by ease from those thrilled by challenge.
Precisely.
So this leads to a really interesting question. When do you feel smart? How does each mindset answer that?
Yeah, we ask people this directly. Those with a fixed mindset often say they feel smart when things are easy for them, when they don't make mistakes, when they finish fast and perfectly, or when they can do something others can't.
So it's about effortless perfection, being smart right now.
Exactly. It's a snapshot. But the growth mindset folks, they define feeling smart very differently.
How so?
They say things like, when it's really hard and I try really hard and I can do something I couldn't do before, or when I work on something for a long time and I finally start to figure it out.
It's about the process, the struggle, the progress over time.
It's about engagement and improvement, not immediate perfection.
And this ties into that fixed mindset idea that ability should appear, right? Like, if you have the talent, why do you need to learn?
Yes. It's almost this implicit belief. I saw this with really bright graduate students at Columbia, amazing test scores, brilliant minds. But when faced with the actual work of academia publishing papers, writing grants, they'd freeze up.
Why?
They'd say things like, oh my God, I can't do that. They completely forgot the crucial word, yet. The whole point of being there was to learn how. But the fixed mindset made them feel like they should already know.
It's like the fixed mindset doesn't allow for becoming. You have to already be.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that pressure to already be a star can lead to terrible decisions. Think about those journalists, Janet Cook, Stephen Glass.
Right, who fabricated stories.
They felt such intense pressure to be seen as brilliant now that they bypassed the hard work of actually becoming brilliant reporters through experience and effort. They chose the illusion over the reality because the fixed mindset demanded immediate proof.
That pressure is intense.
Uh,
And it connects to how a single evaluation, like a test score, can feel so defining in a fixed mindset.
oh, absolutely. It can feel like a permanent label. There was this story of Loretta who took some kind of assessment in kindergarten, didn't score at the very top.
At age 5.
Yeah, and she carried that feeling her whole life. She felt she'd been diagnosed as having a fixed lower ability, that she never truly belonged with the elite kids, even when she later achieved academic success. That one data point defined her potential in her mind.
That's heartbreaking, and kids pick up on this idea quickly.
Frighteningly quickly. In another study, fixed mindset fifth graders genuinely believed a single test could measure how smart they were, like forever.
Wow.
But the growth mindset kids, they
Right.
just laughed at that idea. They were like, no way, tests can do that. They had this inherent sense that ability wasn't fixed by one snapshot.
This belief in fixed potential, it also leads people to make snap judgments about others,
Yeah.
right? Based on really superficial things.
Totally. Like Joseph P. Kennedy telling Morton Downey Jr. he'd be a failure because he wore red socks with brown shoes. It sounds absurd, but it comes from that place of believing you can just see fixed potential or lack thereof.
When history is full of examples proving that wrong, people like Jackson Pollock, Elvis, Darwin, all initially dismissed by experts in their field.
Exactly. They didn't start out as legends. Paul Cézanne's early paintings. Apparently, many were pretty bad. It took time, effort, and development for him to become Cézanne. Potential unfolds over time.
There was that great quote from a teacher responding to one of your surveys.
Oh, Michael Riordan, yes. Some fixed mindset teachers in the survey felt they could tell a student's potential from one math score. And he wrote back so powerfully, "You cannot determine the slope of a line given only 1 point, as there's no line to begin with."
Boom. That says it all, doesn't it? A single point tells you nothing about trajectory.
Nothing at all. And it's why organizations like NASA, when picking astronauts, actually look for people who had experienced significant failures and recovered.
Not the ones with perfect records.
Nope. They wanted people who had demonstrated resilience, the ability to learn from mistakes, to rebound. They were selecting for a growth mindset, understanding that's more valuable than a flawless but untested past.
Okay, so another facet of the fixed mindset seems to be this drive to be seen as special, right? Maybe even superior.
Yeah, when success is prioritized over growth, it often becomes about proving you're inherently better than others. It's not just about being good, it's about being uniquely gifted.
The author mentioned her own experience with this, needing constant validation.
Right, keeping these mental scorecards, intelligence scorecard, attractiveness scorecard, and living for those little moments of external validation, like a taxi driver saying she seemed different. It's this hunger to be singled out.
And the self-esteem movement, while aiming to be positive, sometimes accidentally feeds into this.
Yeah.
Like that I love me mirror.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
If self-esteem is built just on affirmations of inherent specialness, without grounding it in effort and learning, it can foster that fixed mindset sense of superiority rather than genuine confidence built on growth.
This quest to be number one, to be special, it can have a dark side too, can't it? You mentioned John McEnroe.
He's kind of the classic example of a fixed mindset in overdrive. Believed talent was everything, despised effort, blamed everyone else when he lost. He felt his special talent entitled him to behave terribly.
Like that incident where he threw up on his host in Japan.
Yeah, and the host apologized to him. It shows how that fixed mindset can lead to this sense of entitlement, this belief that the normal rules don't apply to you because you're inherently superior.
Contrast that with someone like Michael Jordan.
Right. When people treated him like a god, he found it embarrassing. He'd say, "I'm a human being like everyone else." He knew the incredible hard work that went into his abilities. He didn't buy into the born special narrative about himself.
Or Chuck Yeager, the test pilot.
Yeah, the hero from The Right Stuff. He always emphasized the hard work, the practice, the continuous learning. Famously said, "There is no such thing as a natural-born pilot. It's all learned, honed through effort."
It really brings us back to that core question for the fixed mindset. If being successful makes you somebody, what happens when you're unsuccessful?
That's the terrifying question, isn't it? And it leads directly into how differently the mindsets handle failure.
How does the fixed mindset process failure?
It transforms it. Failure stops being an action, "I failed," and becomes an identity, "I am a failure." It gets internalized completely.
That sounds devastating. You mentioned the Martins and their little boy.
Yeah, that story is just heartbreaking. Their 3-year-old son didn't get into the #1 preschool, and they started treating him differently, cooling towards him. They literally labeled their toddler a failure.
Oh my gosh. At 3?
It shows how deeply ingrained that mindset can be. And the author herself admitted avoiding competitions as a kid, spelling bees, French contests.
Why?
Fear. Fear of risking that identity. Fear of going from being seen as a success to being labeled a failure. She didn't want to be the girl who didn't get into Princeton. The potential label was too frightening.
But for the growth mindset, failure isn't a label.
Right. It's still painful. Nobody likes failing, but it doesn't define you. It's seen as a problem to be dealt with, something to learn from, a setback, not a sentence.
Like Jim Marshall, the football player who ran the wrong way.
Exactly. Talk about a public, humiliating failure. Scored a touchdown for the wrong team on national TV. He could have easily let that define him, let shame consume him.
But he didn't?
No, he faced it. He talked about it. He resolved to make it right by playing his absolute best football afterward. He used it as fuel to learn and grow, not as a reason to hide.
That's resilience. But the fixed mindset can lead to tragic outcomes, like the chef Bernard Lizotte.
Yes, such a sad story. A top French chef, 3 Michelin stars. He lost a couple of points in a different rating guide, heard rumors he might lose a Michelin star, and he committed suicide. In his fixed mindset world, that potential downgrade wasn't just feedback, it was a devastating new definition of who he was. Failure has been. It obliterated his identity.
It's terrifying how much power a single evaluation can hold in that mindset. Even success can be viewed strangely, like that fishing story.
Oh, right. That was funny, but so telling. The author catches this beautiful trout fly fishing, and immediately these other men nearby, presumably with fixed mindsets, go over to comfort her husband.
Seriously. Like, tough luck, man. She showed you up.
Pretty much, commiserating with him as if her success must diminish him. It perfectly illustrates that zero-sum game thinking that can come with a fixed mindset. If you win, I lose.
So when failure does happen, how do people with a fixed mindset cope? Or do they cope?
Well, the mindset itself doesn't offer very good coping mechanisms because failure means you lack ability. So what do?
Right.
In one study with 7th graders who did poorly on a test, the fixed mindset kids said they'd probably study less for the next one. Some even said they'd consider cheating.
Why study less? That seems counterintuitive.
Because if failure means you lack the ability, why bother putting in more effort? It won't help. Cheating, though, might preserve the illusion of ability.
Whereas the growth mindset kids,
They said they'd study harder. Obvious, right? And when trying to feel better after a poor performance, fixed mindset college students would look for tests of people who did even worse than them.
to feel superior by comparison.
Exactly. But the growth mindset students, they wanted to look at the tests of people who did better. They wanted to learn from them.
So one seeks comfort in others' failure, the other seeks learning from others' success. Big difference. And then there's the blame game.
Oh, yeah. John McEnroe's legendary list of excuses. It was the crowd, the umpire, the court surface, a cameraman. Never his fault.
Which meant he never had to look at his own concentration or emotional control.
Precisely. Blaming others protects the ego but prevents learning. It reminds me of what the great basketball coach John Wooden said.
What was that?
You want a failure until you start to blame. Blaming is where you give up on learning and improving.
That's powerful. And you see this in the corporate world too, right? Blame versus accountability.
Absolutely. Think of Jeffrey Skilling at Enron. When the company imploded, he blamed the market, the regulators, the press, everyone but Enron's leadership. A total externalization of blame.
Compared to
Jack Welch at GE. When the Kidder Peabody subsidiary got caught in an insider trading scandal, Welch publicly took responsibility. He called it his disaster, his failure to oversee things properly. He owned it, learned from it, and moved GE forward.
that ownership is key. This difference in mindset, it even affects how people deal with something like depression.
It seems to. Research found that students with a fixed mindset tended to experience higher levels of depression. A big reason was rumination.
Rumination.
Yeah, they'd get stuck on setbacks, just going over and over them in their minds, tormenting themselves with the idea that the failure proved they were incompetent or unworthy.
And that leads to
Often, inaction, feeling hopeless, letting things slide, which just makes the depression worse. It becomes a downward spiral fueled by that fixed interpretation of failure.
but growth mindset students, even when depressed.
They actually became more determined to take action. They were more likely to keep up with their schoolwork, confront the problems they were facing, seek help.
Even while feeling depressed.
Yes. There was this story of a freshman who felt severely depressed but forced himself to go to classes, do the work, and eventually reach out for counseling. His mindset pushed him towards constructive action, even when his mood was low.
So the mindset isn't a cure for depression, obviously, but it changes the response to it.
Exactly. Temperament matters, of course. But the growth mindset seems to foster resilience, motivation, problem solving, even in tough times. The fixed mindset, by defining people by failure, can rob them of those coping resources.
It's fascinating how it reframes effort, too. Culturally, we often seem to admire natural talent more than hard work, don't we?
We do. It's kind of ironic. Think about the story of the tortoise and the hare. We say slow and steady wins, but secretly, we all want to be the naturally fast hare. Just maybe a bit smarter about naps. We idolize musical prodigies like Midori or athletes like Michael Jordan, often talking about them as if they just sprang into existence fully formed, forgetting the mountains of effort involved.
So the fixed mindset buys into that narrative. Effort is less valuable.
Yeah, for the fixed mindset, effort is almost suspect. It's seen as something only needed by those who lack natural ability. The thinking is, if you have to work hard at it, you must not be very good at it.
Which leads to that pressure for effortless perfection you mentioned.
Exactly. Like
Right.
those Duke University women feeling they had to be perfectly smart, perfectly beautiful, perfectly accomplished, all without anyone seeing them sweat. Appearing to try hard would undermine the image of natural brilliance.
But the growth mindset sees effort completely differently.
Completely. For the growth mindset, even geniuses work incredibly hard. Effort isn't a sign you lack ability. It's the very thing that activates and grows ability into real accomplishment.
It's the key ingredient.
It is the key ingredient. Think about Seabiscuit. That story is such a powerful metaphor for this.
The racehorse.
Yeah, this undersized, broken horse paired with a team of equally damaged people, the jockey, the owner, the trainer, and through sheer grit, determination, relentless effort, they became champions. It's the ultimate underdog story celebrating the power of will and effort.
And the author who wrote the book, Laura Hillenbrand.
Her story is just as incredible. She battled debilitating chronic fatigue syndrome for years while writing it. The effort required was monumental. Her own growth mindset and determination mirrored Seabiscuit's.
Wow. So if effort is so crucial for the growth mindset, why is it actually terrifying for the fixed mindset?
Two main reasons, really. First, as we said, needing effort implies you might not have that natural genius. It punctures the illusion.
Okay. And second,
Second, and this is huge, effort robs you of all your excuses. If you try your absolute hardest and still fail, well, in the fixed mindset, that's the ultimate confirmation that you just don't have what it takes. It's less threatening to not try fully, so you can always say, well, if I'd really tried.
that makes sense. Like Nadja Selena Sonnenberg, the violinist prodigy.
Right. She was so afraid of trying her best and failing that she literally stopped bringing her violin to lessons. She said, nothing is harder than saying, I gave it my all and it wasn't good enough. That fear of final judgment paralyzed her.
Until her teacher gave her an ultimatum.
Exactly. Dorothy DeLay basically forced her to confront that fear, embrace the effort. She did, won a major competition, and had this epiphany. You have to work hardest for the things you love most. She had to switch mindsets.
This fear of effort can even mess up relationships. You mentioned Amanda.
Yeah, she kept choosing these crazy boyfriends she knew wouldn't last over a genuinely good guy, Rob. Why? Because with Rob, it felt real. She feared that if she really invested effort, let him truly know her, her imperfect self, he might eventually be turned off.
So she avoided the vulnerability of real effort and potential rejection.
Exactly. It felt safer to stick with relationships that were doomed from the start, where failure was expected, than to risk putting her whole heart into something that might still fail.
It's that contrast between looking back with regret, thinking, I could have been, like Claire Booth Luce felt about her theater dreams,
Right. Polishing those unused talents like trophies.
versus the satisfaction of knowing I gave my all, like Billie Jean King's philosophy, regardless of the outcome.
It's a fundamentally different way of measuring your life. But here's a crucial point. People with a fixed mindset might intellectually know all this stuff about growth and effort. They might read the books, nod along, but their deep down belief in fixed traits often prevents them from actually acting on it consistently. The underlying mindset overrides the intellectual understanding.
That's a really important distinction. So, okay, we've unpacked a lot here. Let's tackle some common questions people might have as they're wrapping their heads around this. One is, Why the constant need for validation in the fixed mindset? If you prove yourself once, why keep doing it?
Because the world keeps presenting new challenges. Like slaying one dragon doesn't mean there isn't a bigger one around the corner. Yesterday's proof might not feel sufficient for today's test. It's a treadmill.
Like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
That's a perfect analogy. Initially, he's stuck in that loop, and what does he do? He uses it to prove his superiority over and over, manipulating people, showing off his knowledge of the day.
He's living in a fixed mindset playground. Endless chances to look good without real consequence.
Exactly. But it leaves him completely empty and miserable. It's only when he shifts his focus, when he starts using the time to learn piano, ice sculpting, helping people, that he finds meaning and eventually breaks the spell. He had to move from proving to learning and connecting.
Great example. Okay, next question. Are these mindsets permanent fixtures, or can people change?
Definitely not permanent. That's the hopeful message. Mindsets are changeable. Just learning about the two mindsets can start to make you notice your own fixed mindset triggers and choose a different response.
So awareness is the first step.
Absolutely. And research shows you can nudge people, even temporarily, into a growth mindset just by, say, having them read an article about how abilities are developed through practice. More permanent change takes conscious effort, but it's very possible.
Can someone be a mix, like fixed in one area, growth in another?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably most common. You might feel your artistic talent is fixed, I just can't draw, but believe strongly that you can improve your public speaking skills with practice. We can have different mindsets about different abilities.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
What about failure? If I adopt a growth mindset, does that mean every failure is now my fault because I just didn't try hard enough?
No, not at all. That's a misinterpretation. The growth mindset emphasizes the power of effort, but it doesn't ignore reality. Resources matter, opportunities matter, luck plays a role, other people's actions matter. It's about focusing on the learning and effort within your control, not blaming yourself for everything.
Right. Is the growth mindset just another way of saying you should always aim to be number one? Is it all about winning?
Not necessarily, no. The focus is primarily on personal development, fulfilling your potential, and finding enjoyment and meaning in the process. We often use examples of top achievers because they vividly show the limits of what's possible with this mindset, but reaching the absolute top is often a byproduct of their passion and dedication, not the sole goal itself. Many deeply growth-minded people find satisfaction in striving and learning, regardless of whether they win the prize. Like that lawyer who fought a losing battle for years but had no regrets because he gave his all.
Okay. Can someone be a workaholic but still have a fixed mindset
Yeah.
because they're putting in a lot of effort?
Yes, definitely. That's an important nuance. Someone can work incredibly hard, but if the underlying drive is still about proving their inherent superiority, needing to be seen as the smartest, being terrified of mistakes, then it's still fundamentally a fixed mindset driving the effort. The reason for the effort matters.
Got it. What if someone says, you know what? I kind of like my fixed mindset. It's comfortable knowing my limits.
Well, okay, there can be a perceived comfort in feeling like you know where you stand. I'm good at this, not good at that. End of story. But the huge potential downside is that you might be drastically underestimating what you're actually capable of.
You might be limiting yourself unnecessarily.
Exactly. And you might sabotage your own success by avoiding challenges or giving up too easily because you rely solely on that perceived inherent talent. The growth mindset doesn't force you to pursue everything. It just opens the door by saying, development is possible. The choice is still yours.
Does the growth mindset mean everything about a person can be changed? Like, can I learn to love opera if I hate it?
Probably not. It's about developing abilities and potential, not necessarily changing fundamental preferences or personality traits. The author told that funny story about the taxi driver trying for years to make himself love opera. Some things are just preferences. It's okay to accept some things about yourself that aren't core abilities.
Good point. Last one. Are fixed mindset people just lacking in confidence?
Not always initially, no. They can start out feeling very confident, especially if they've had early successes. But the key difference is that their confidence is fragile.
No, so.
Because it's tied to effortless perfection. So setbacks, challenges, even just needing to exert significant effort, it can shatter that confidence quickly. It feels like proof they aren't smart after all.
You saw this in that computer training study.
Yeah. The fixed mindset employees actually lost confidence as they inevitably made mistakes while learning the new system. But the growth mindset employees, their confidence grew as they tackled the challenges and learned more.
Like Michelle Way, the golfer. Entering that men's tournament.
Exactly. She didn't do it thinking she'd necessarily win or even boost her immediate confidence. She did it for the learning experience, knowing it would make her better in the long run. Her confidence wasn't brittle, it was based on growth potential.
And that swimmer who felt worse when told just to believe in herself.
Right. That vague advice just made her focus on her flaws. But when she read about focusing on the process of learning and improving, it clicked. It turned her around.
So the wonderful thing about the growth mindset is you don't always need to feel confident to start.
That's one of its greatest strengths. You can dive into something precisely because you're not good at it yet. Your motivation comes from the desire to learn and improve, not from already feeling competent. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect from day one. Writing the book this is based on, the author said, was incredibly hard work, intimidating, but ultimately brought immense joy through the effort and learning itself.
Okay, so we've really explored this profound difference between fixed and growth mindsets. It's clearly more than just theory, it's a practical tool. How can listeners start to actively grow their own mindset? What are some concrete steps?
It really does start with awareness. So step one, recognize that fixed mindset voice. Next time you're doing something, maybe enjoying it, but then it gets hard and you suddenly feel tired, bored, maybe even a bit dizzy or frustrated, wanting to quit.
That feeling.
That's often the fixed mindset kicking in, saying, this is too hard, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Just notice it. And then try this. Picture your brain literally forming new connections as you push through that difficulty. Visualize the growth happening. That small mental reframing can make a big difference.
Okay, notice the voice. Reframe the challenge as brain building. What else?
Oh.
How about feedback?
Actively seek constructive criticism. Don't just surround yourself with people who tell you how great you are. Find mentors, colleagues, friends who will give you honest feedback focused on how you can improve. And try to welcome it, even if it stings a little initially. See it as a gift for growth.
That's a tough one, but crucial. What about looking back at past failures? Those moments that might still feel defining.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Pick one of those moments, a test you bombed, a rejection, a project that didn't work out. First, acknowledge your role, honestly, but then consciously separate the event from your identity. It doesn't define your intelligence or your worth. Ask yourself, what specific things can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to grow moving forward? Turn it from a defining moment into a learning opportunity.
Take the lesson, not the label. I like that. And if someone is feeling low, maybe struggling with depressive feelings.
When you're in that state, deliberately try to activate a growth mindset. Remind yourself about learning, challenge, effort as constructive forces. Think about one small, manageable action you can take. Go for a short walk, tackle one email, read one chapter. Focus on action and the process, not just the overwhelming feeling. It can help create a little bit of forward momentum.
Small steps, focusing on action.
Yeah.
Lastly, for anyone wanting to just jump in and try something new,
Make a plan. Pick something you've always wanted to try but felt afraid you wouldn't be good at. Learning guitar, cooking, coding, a new language. Whatever it is, make a concrete small plan to start. Embrace being a beginner. Focus on the process of learning. Celebrate small improvements and commit to putting in the effort.
fantastic advice. So we've journeyed through these two mindsets, seeing how viewing your abilities as fixed versus changeable makes such a profound difference. Understanding this isn't just interesting. It feels like a really practical tool for looking at your past, navigating your present, and maybe even designing your future differently.
Absolutely. And thinking back to that Groundhog Day idea, it's a powerful metaphor to consider. Are there areas in your own life where you might feel stuck in a loop, constantly trying to prove the same thing over and over, seeking that external validation?
Instead of actually learning, evolving, engaging more deeply, what would it look like if you consciously chose, like Phil Connors eventually did, to use that time and energy not just to polish the exterior, but for genuine internal growth and connection? It's a provocative thought. The choice ultimately is yours. Where will your mindset take you next?